Good evening. Good evening. Welcome in RNQ Easy No classes. Unit block number 3. Unit number 3. The linguistic turn and epistemic justification. 3.0 objectives. The aim of this unit is to familiarize the student with the trends in the language philosophy especially after the great linguistic turn which shifted the focus of philosophy to the language. The unit also familiarizes the student with the epistemological justifications with regard to the prepositions, which is the main contributions to the understanding, which comes as a unique contributions after a linguistic turn. 3.1 Introduction. In the philosophical attempt to understand the world, man, and the transcendent, there are various attempts to answer the fundamental questions. The history of philosophy shows the evidence that there are shifts in understanding the reality from various perspectives. It was from speculations through reason to analysis of knowledge that the philosophy has grown into, and the way it has accommodated various insights from various science in its attempt to understand the world. However, one of the drastic shifts in understanding the reality is through the focus on language. It can be traced to the long history, but evidently it became prominent during the 19th and 20th centuries. This major shift we are going to discuss is the linguistic turn in understanding the reality. Every philosophy, metaphysics, has its own epistemological outlook and a worldview. It is based on this. The philosophical body of knowledge has grown. The laying bare of the prepositions behind a particular philosophical way of looking makes philosophical problems clear and helps in searching for the better answers. In this process, the older answers seem to be opinions, and newer answers are sought to replace the opinions. One of the shifts in the finding a new answers to the ever new problems of philosophy is recourse to the language in which any philosophical problems are formulated. Therefore, the linguistic turn in philosophy refers to the analysis of language has the potential for providing answers to the philosophical problems. Generally, this turn has parted into two different ways in answering philosophical problems. One of the ways is the ideal language philosophy, and the other as the ordinary language philosophy. 3.2 Major factors of linguistic turn. The linguistic turn in philosophy aims at arriving at truth through the analysis of language. Initially, the language philosophy school was anti-metaphysical in its outlook. It is influenced by the logical positivism of the Vienna Circle and the scientific bent on verifications and other important presuppositions in linguistic philosophy. In the shift of discussions from reality to that which describes the reality, namely the language philosophy assumes that the language reflects the reality. Hence, the language is an efficient tool to understand the reality through its descriptions and through the analysis of its logical syntax. Hence, the linguistic turn aims at describing the world by describing a suitable language. Phone asila. Guddulu. Suitable language is method according to this school of philosophy. 3.3 3.3 Historical survey. Important contributions. Linguistic turn in philosophy did not occur within one day. It was a longer reflections and growth in fields such as phenomenology, extensionalism, logic, etc., gave rise to linguistic turn, the growth of science and the scientific world view in some way helped in developing a turn towards language analysis. Bill Science claimed that particular truths philosophy was trying to give the most general truths about the world and reality, a universal picture of the world, a general world view, a synopsis wherein all other truths could be held together. However, previously the philosophers who were arriving at this kind of truth were distinct from each other, and hence there was not one view of the world but several. How to account for such variety and multiplicity of views wherein there are contradicting views from one another in the history of the development of ideas. The linguistic turn is a profound one. However, the two major trends have contributed in arriving at this turn. They can be categorized as development from Frege and Minongong, who were belonging to the philosophical traditions in Germany, and the other is from the English speaking tradition, especially or Mori and Russell and Wittgenstein. The contributions of the philosophers from the German speaking philosophers, especially of Frege, are important here. First of all, Freeze held that the notions that the structures of a thought must be reflected in the structure of sentence. Expressing it and not merely encoding it, it meant that without reference to the linguistic expressions, the thought structure can't be studied because every thought is mediated by language. Therefore, the understanding came about as the thought is grasped in grasping the semantic properties of the sentence. To speak of the structure of the thought is to speak of the semantic interrelations of the parts of the sentence. And secondly, the notions of sense and reference played a significant role in determining the truth value of sentence and the thought. Thirdly, Fries held that an expression simply has a sense which is objective, and therefore human beings have access to thoughts only as expressed in language or symbolism. At one stand philosophy of language, these thoughts of Frege contribute to the linguistic turn. At the other side, the Morean emphasis on the common sense research of logical atoms and Wittgenstein's emphasis on language gave altogether to each the philosophical directions and the philosophical questions. It is from here the emphasis falls on the language. The language philosophy turns to the analysis of language as the philosophical truth is expressed in language. The analysis of language here is the arriving at the meaning of the expression, the sense of it. Therefore, linguistic turn essentially presupposes a secondary reflections on language in which the world is expressed either truly or falsely. The expression therefore can represent the world through propositions which are either true or false. In this sense, language philosophy looks at philosophy as an activity of finding meaning through analysis. When the meanings are found, the problems of philosophy are dissolved. When a problem is understood, it no longer remains a problem. Hence, the explications of the philosophical problem through language will lead to the disappearance misunderstanding which we usually call philosophical problems. Secondly, some problems will repair as the problems of ordinary science and not philosophical ones. Analytics being One of the chief methods of philosophical inquiry, we find that the history of the development of their language analysis can be understood in four different phases. The traditional analysis which leads to the constructions of artificial languages. Later Wittgenstein analysis and analysis of the Oxford School of Language philosophers, some of the important contributors to the linguistic turn and the philosophers of the school: Edmund Husserl, Martin Heidegger, G. E. Murray, Bertrand Russell, Rudolf Carnap, Gilbert Royal, Gustav Bergman, Norman Malcolm, Max Black, W. B. O. Quinn, Wittgenstein, Peter Grich, Donald Davidson, P. F. Starson, etc. 3.4 Reconstruction of metaphysics. One important point to note here is that mutual sharing has taken place between language schools of philosophy and the logical positivist school. At some point they agree and take inspirations from one another. However, there are essential differences. Languages as such has been studied by philologists, aestheticians, physiologists, psychologists, sociologists, etc. But the type of study undertaken by the language school is unique because it tried to bring together insights as general truths under the banner of the analysis of language. Certain presuppositions of the language school are necessary to understand the metaphysics they construct. The language school of philosophy considers that philosophical problems are not perceived problems but can't be polarized into either phenomenology alone or formalism only. These problems are essentially linguistic. Secondly, the philosophical propositions are used in the first place in the ordinary sense, and secondly in their complexity in the technical sense. Therefore, in one sense, it uses common sense of the language. Philosophical problems are not pursued formalism only. Issued problems but can't be polarized into either phenomenology alone or formalism only. These problems are essentially linguistic. Secondly, the philosophical prepositions are used in the first place in the ordinary sense, and secondly in their complexity in the technical sense. Therefore, in one sense, it uses common sense of the language, and the other the complex ideal sense with fixed meanings. Thirdly, language philosophy assumes that grammatical form may mislead in understanding the philosophical problems, and therefore technical symbolizations can be used in the form of ideal language. Fourthly, language philosophy considers the syntax of language, especially the of ideal formal language, as the object of analysis, which will lead to the proper uh, meaning of expression. Syntax here deals with some properties of the signs and of the patterns in which these signs are arranged. Here the syntax stands underneath the expressions and words of natural language. The elements of syntax language can be called signs need interpretations, and they defined in order to be arranged. Hence the De- Defining of the science in the syntactic language in turn defines the understand undefined signs of the same language. When the words and expressions stand for such signs, they give rise to meaning. On these notions, we can understand how the language school reconstructs the metaphysics. First of all, the differences of views on philosophical problems are no longer are considered incompatible, but are considered to have a common sense core. This solves the problem of understanding the reality as diverse, unified, etc. by the analysis of language. The second reconstruction is regarding the notions of truth. The language school analysis the certainty, scientific and analytic truths. The notions of certainty can be applied to the scientific truths, wherein the certainty becomes absolute regarding the object in the world with regard to its content. However, the notions of certainty with regard to analytic truths may not give any certainty about the contents of the world. It only works of the framework of logical language. Understanding this independently of each other blurs the understanding of certainty. Abstract entities like relations, properties, classes, numbers, prepositions, etc. problematic issues in the language when they are looked from the empirical point of view. However, language philosophy discusses them within the linguistic framework by dividing them into two categories, such as internal questions within the framework and entities as whole as external questions based upon the language framework, such as logical framework and factual framework. The questions of these abstract entities can be dealt with. Factual framework depends much on the empirical standpoint, while the former stands for the logical analysis of language. The reality of internal question stands out as empirical reality, having a framework of thing language, while the external questions are answered from different points of view, such as realism, idealism, etc., because they are raised from the point of view of theoretical framework. 3.5 Two schools. Ordinary language philosophy of G. E. Mori. G. Mori is the chief proponent of ordinary language philosophy. Mori's philosophy bases itself on the common sense view and ordinary language. Common sense view of the world and the ordinary language are closely connected. In the ordinary language philosophy of Mori, the epistemology based on the empiricism is hallmark of ordinary language philosophy. Therefore, empirical statements to have a certainty of themselves. Mori's concept of certainty, knowledge, and language emerge from this his understanding of the sense data theory. Idealism had emphasized on the role of mind to such a great extent that what mind perceives, namely the material object reality, was reduced to mental phenomena, a thought or idea. Murray held that in any case it is through sensations and perceptions that we form the ideas in our minds. It is not our ideas which form the object. Thus there exists some sort of reality outside, beyond our mind. Our mind, this reality is the content of our experience. It is through senses. That we know the material objects, and on this all other means of knowledge are based. Thus in our experience of objects be, ap- be apparent something which is there and not an idea. This content of our experience is known as sense data. More succeeds Mori succeeds in establishing the existence of material objects. However, the encounters the problem that in our direct apprehension be directly apparent certain sense data, and at the same time something other than sense data. The something other than sense data is known through the propositions, which are new class of facts in the universe. Moore classifies material entities into his classifications is based on the knowledge of material entities. Knowledge of material entities is derived through the propositions. What are means by propositions is a preposition is the sort of thing which is commonly expressed by a whole sentence. For more, a preposition does not mean collections of words, rather a sort of thing which these collections of words. For more, a preposition does not mean collection of words, rather a sort of thing which these collections of words express. mean analyzing the example of twice 2 or 4 and twice 4 or 8. In both cases what is appended for 8 or the meaning is prepositions. Murray concludes that a preposition has an act of act of apprehension, and what is apprehended is prepositions. The notions of logical certainty does not apply to the empirical statements. According to this school, the falsity comes to surface when expressions contradict the empirical facts or when wrong language is used to describe the empirical facts. However, an ordinary expression is an expression which would be used to describe non-contradictory situation. A certain sort of situation at the same time. An ordinary expression also can construct a contradictory situation. Ideal language philosophy of Bertrand Russell focus being different or two different thinkers in this school. Ideal language assumes that the properties of language any help in understanding the structure of the world. The linguistic approach to metaphysics being an inquiry. It understands the relation between the language and world. Each of the facts of which the world is composed has understand the relation between the language and the world. Each of the fact of which the world of composed has a certain ontological structure. In order for a given sentence to assert a particular fact, the sentence must have a logical structure which has something in common with the ontological structure of the fact. Hence the not unreasonable presumptions that sentences are easier to investigate than the facts. They assert the royal road of a metaphysical knowledge consist of investigating the structures of the sentences for a study of a grammar will yield us knowledge of that part of the ontological structure of the world which is common fact on the one hand and sentences asserting those facts on the other. However, natural language and its grammar have many accidental features and it can assert by several sentences and in diverse structures. Therefore, the natural language leads to ambiguity of perplexity in its expression, and hence to gain metaphysical knowledge through investigating language one must first construct an ideal or logically perfect language. To investigate logical syntax is the requirement of the ideal language in order to represent the world in some sense. Therefore, we can say that an imperfect language will have a misleading structure which will render unsound any inferences drawn from its structure to the structure of the world. Russell's theory of descriptions and his search for the ultimate constituents of the world need mentions here. The theory of description ascribes shadowy mode of participations and existence of the abstract and imaginative entities not adhering to any disputable epistemology. This theory of description stands as a method of a logical translations. In some sense, it can be interpreted as a contribution to the reform of common scientific improvement of the vocabulary of ordinary language is provided through theory of descriptions rather than a doctrine of logical construction. Theory of language: the relationship between the logical constructions of language, ideal and the non-ideal logicality of the material words are based on the epistemological principles of the reducibility of knowledge to acquaintance. Therefore, the sentences of natural language are already of translations when it's consistent and entirely of logically proper names, for they are the ultimate constituents of the world. The sentences, therefore, in some sense, are pictorial sentences. The logically proper names, the ultimate constituents of the world, are those with which we can be acquainted through this view. Has its own defects. The theory of descriptions through the recognitions of ultimate constituents of the world sense data with which we are acquainted shines its light on real language in which the defects of the ordinary language are removed. The ideal language therefore is a construction which removes the defects of the ordinary language using the symbols which are logically proper names denoting objects or acquaintance. The contributions of Wittgenstein can't be ignored here. He has been dealt in the previous unit. We don't have a detailed discussion here. 3.6 Impact on Philosophy Epistemology. The linguistic turn through its analysis has brought out some solution to the metaphysical problems, epistemological problems, and also has brought some other problems too. In the first place, the impact can be noticed that the ordinary language is taken seriously to find out to our scientific philosophical problems started in them are really the problems of language of the problems of reality. Secondly, the language is understood not merely as a grammatical construct rather having a logical structure. Language therefore fall under the domain of logic. The epistemological plant who has been influenced by the linguistic turn. The epistemological logic of linguistic school has its basis on two fundamental views of empiricism and idealism, while the ordinary language philosophy has the foundations of empiricism. The latter developments from Russell to Wittgenstein have their foundations in idealism to a very great extent. It is the latter school which became prominent in its analysis of language, strongly being influenced by the logical positivism of Vienna Circle. The usually considered ontology and the picture ontology of the picture of reality is pre-received through the linguistic lens. After the linguistic turn, the language itself is considered as a category and has commonality with the structure of the world, and therefore there is a direct relationship with the world and language. The inner structure of language through the notions of prepositions gets more attention as the prepositional structure can be analyzed through the logical tools and symbols forming an ideal language. 3.7 Epistemic justification. Epistemology in the recent times has shifted its focus from discussing the traditional questions of knowledge to the deeper areas of perceptions in relation to beliefs. Epistemology is the study of knowledge and the justifications of belief. It tries to answer the questions such as which beliefs are justified and which are not. What is the difference between knowing and having a true belief? What is the relation between seeing and knowing, etc. In this regard, positions are taken as realism, idealism, and others towards knowledge, and the standpoints of different schools pose further problems in the field of epistemology. Knowledge and its relation to justified true belief. Knowledge arises in experience, reflections, and develops through inference. It has a distinctive structure and content. Knowledge can be knowledge of the objects which are external to us, much of the sense data theories and realistic theories deal with this view of epistemology. However, the knowledge is not merely of the external objects. External objects knowledge also can be of different kinds. It also includes the mental status, imaginations, mathematics, etc. The content of knowledge becomes beliefs, prepositions which are believed to be true. Such knowledge certainly depends on the perceptions, but is beyond perceptions, like knowledge through memory, reflections on abstract matters, etc. Therefore, the justifications of belief as content of the knowledge is much. It needs some footing to hold it to be true. In this sense, a justified true belief needs to be the grounded on some source which is considered as true. It usually It usually finds itself grounded on causal justifications and epistemic justice grounds. A belief is grounded on causal ground because an experience underlies the belief. It is grounded on justifications because some elements of our beliefs are related to such experience and epistemically justified because the knowledge constitutes the belief we hold in virtue of our experience. What is justification? No, not all knowledge is justified true belief, but all knowledge is at least justified true belief. The natural knowledge which strongly has its foundation on the sense experience does not need to be justified by any other kind. However, the propositional knowledge does need justification. The knowledge about the world in its relation to truth has its basis in the world. However, the justification is related to the process inside the mind. Therefore, that which is not visible, the propositional knowledge needs to be justified for the sake of communications of knowledge. Justification is essentially connected with the truth, whether it is a propositional belief or empirical belief. Both are connected with truth. Knowledge arises from the same sources as justification, the internal states and process that justify our beliefs also connect our beliefs with external facts in virtue of which those beliefs are true. The relationship between the knowledge and belief is closely connected. When the belief is not based on direct knowledge and the dependent upon indirect knowledge, the foundations of such belief needs to be closely looked into in the long epistemic chain. The belief that constitutes the knowledge might have been derived from some knowledge. In this sense, the epistemic chain may lead to infinite regress without anchoring anywhere, giving any strong knowledge. Will at times it may end with a belief that constitutes the direct knowledge. Direct in this connection, the epistemic justification is concerned about reaching to the direct knowledge which justifies the belief without being circular. It reaches it to one of the direct or non inferential source of knowledge like perception, memory, introspections, or reason. When we say reason, it can be valid inferences, the last result where the directly justified beliefs appears. The belief can be called as a foundational belief from which there is no further regress. Theories of Theories of epistemic justification. Epistemic justification is a normative notion. It is regarding the belief which leads to knowledge, the norms which govern the beliefs, rules describing the circumstances under which it is epistemically permissible to hold. Beliefs are called epistemic norms. Epistemic conditions is necessary conditions for knowledge. In other words, epistemic justification in some way hits at the foundations of knowledge, of source of knowledge. In this regard, epistemic theories can be categorized as doxastic theories, which include foundation theories and coherence theories, and two non-doxastic theories, which include internalism and externalism, which also have its subcategories like relativism and probabilism. 3.8 Linguistic turn and epistemic justification. At this juncture, we can deduce and bring in the unique contribution upon which the language philosophy was built, namely the proposition "it is worth nothing." How do we justify the propositions which, according to the language philosophy, is the irreducible thing? Views may differ here based on the schools of thought. However, it is worth nothing that all the schools are uni unanimous on propositions. Going to step further, we can say that the propositions is the possible object of belief. In this sense, the justification of propositions will lead to the understanding that epistemic justifications of propositions will lead to the clarity of the knowledge of the world. According to the language philosophy, the language depicts the structure of the world through the propositions. Hence, if the propositions are epistemically justified, then the breadth which held it to the knowledge is justified. The problematic epistemic justifications of propositions leads us to the basic issue of any justification, namely how the components of the proposition justified. Names in Wittgenstein analysis, logical atoms in Russell's and sense data in Moore are the objects which are the fundamental components of any propositions. In this regard, how do we justify them? Epistemically, it goes directly to perception as a source of knowledge. However, perception has its own limitation and has its basis in empiricism, which has its own and will drawbacks. Therefore, it is worth nothing. The difficulty in justifying the propositions which have been the bedrock of linguistic philosophy. This also threw light on the epistemology they hold, namely logical empiricism, idealism, etc., which the justifications often turns out to be circular.